Play.
My name is Miranda Gubler and I am in the finance and budgeting class. I did my final research project on the effects of privatizing education. When I originally set out to do this project, I was trying to figure out some of the positive benefits, is what I really thought, especially after all of the discussions from the elections. I really wanted to find out if this actually was going to be a positive benefit for the community. When I actually got into the researching, I was a little bit surprised that my original thought was incorrect. My plan was to find out if the privatized education was going to be beneficial to society and as well as to education as a whole. What I actually ended up finding out was that the negative side effects and consequences to privatizing education were a lot greater than any of the benefits that could possibly come from it. A couple of the benefits that people try and talk about are, first, because of the competitive nature of privatizing education, because it's done through corporations, etc., and money is involved, that education will then increase, that a lot of higher standard, more pressure is placed on teachers to have their students act better. One of the second ones is that because it's done through a corporation and not through a government, both teachers are paid more and more funding is possible and available to schools. As I got doing my research, I discovered that neither one of these things ended up being true. That through the competitive atmosphere, rather than providing an increase in educational success, it actually caused a negative outcome. Educational facilities would actually almost blacklist some students who weren't going to perform as well, because that wasn't going to look well on their original outcomes. This kind of alienates a large portion of the population. Students either don't behave well, either don't perform well on standardized tests, etc. All of that stuff is alienated when doing privatized education, especially through the use of vouchers. The second thing that I found out was that governmental employees actually end up getting higher salaries than those that are in the privatized sector, which was kind of a surprise to discover. Not only are they actually getting paid just slightly more, but their pensions are more guaranteed and more precise, as well as being higher. Especially in teachers' cases, trying to go against unions is something that the privatized sector actually goes against. Unionizing is something that actually really protects teachers, and without that, there's a lot lost in the education section. Back to the idea of competition creating a positive outcome. That actually doesn't happen, because when you have these students that aren't making it on the rosters, etc., they're just being ignored, there's so much more that is lost when you consider the privatized sector and the competition that's created. When we continue to look through this, the evidence just continues to pile up on how negative privatization ended up being for the society as a whole, all the way to the fact that we have a past, where is her quote? We have basically a previous Diane Ravitch, is a retired U.S. Assistant Secretary of Education. She makes a really good point and states that public schools are a public service, a public good. It is the obligation of public officials to provide good public schools in every neighborhood, not to privatize them or to act as an umpire whose role is to judge them defective and shut them down. That's one of the biggest things, and coming from a family with teachers and with high educational goals myself, I truly ended up believing this, especially after the evidence and the research really was piling up against the use of privatized education. Anyway, once again, I'm Miranda. That's the finishing amount to my project on here, and privatized education ended up being a bigger consequence than it was worth. Thank you.